Hello friends, myself Pranav Shukla and I welcome you to my online tutorial. Today we are going for the Raintree syllabus grammar book, that is namely the new grammar tree, that is from Oxford syllabus, and our today's concern is class 8 grammar chapter 7 modal verbs. As it is a long concern, so we are going for two parts. In the first part we will discuss the concept of modal verbs, different modal verbs, their usages. In the second part, we are going to solve the exercises from your textbook. So let's commence our chapter number 7, modal verbs. In the earlier chapter, we have discussed two types of verbs, especially main verbs or finite verbs, the verb that show tenses, and we have gone through all the tenses along with their voices. Then in the latest that we have done chapter, that is non-finite verb. So we are dealing with verbs consequently for a long back. Again, there is a concern with verb. Now, as you know, verbs are the most integral and maybe the most important kind of term that plays the important most role in forming the sentence. Sentence formation requires only two types of words. One is noun, that is working as subject or object, or maybe pronoun, that is instead of noun, and the verb itself that shows the action. These two words actually form the sentence, and without them the sentence formation is not possible. Noun is a different concern, we'll go for it sometimes, but our today's concern is verb. Verb has got a lot of varieties. Today we are going for main two types of verbs. So verbs are of two types, lexical and auxiliary. In simple language, lexical is also called as main verb or full verb, and auxiliary is actually the helping verb, that is the informal name. We already gone through lexical verb. There are two types of lexical verb, transitive as well as intransitive. Transitive verb requires an object after it. Intransitive doesn't require an object. Its terminological types are monotransitive, ditransitive. There are two objects are there, complex transitive as well as reflexive. And intransitive has got ambitransitive, that also falls in transitive. But our today's concern is not lexical verb. Today we are going for auxiliary verb. This transitive verb can be the main verb. That also belongs to tenses that reflect the tense and show the exact time and situation of the action. So without that the sentence formation is not possible. But even just to form this lexical, we require auxiliary verb. So auxiliary verb may not be the main verb, but it helps the main verb to form the tense or to get the complete idea about the time and situation. So they are equivalently important. So auxiliary verb are also of two types, primary auxiliary and modal auxiliary. Primary auxiliary are actually mostly helpful to form the tense. They are either the form of be, or the form of have, or the form of do. Well, be, have and do are not the only primary auxiliaries, but their various forms are primary auxiliaries. For example, be being the root form of primary auxiliary has got different forms like am, is, are, was, were, shall be, will be. They are the form of to be. and they all are working with main verb to form the tense. They're actually helping the main verb to form the tense. Suppose if the main verb is playing, if you add is with that, is playing stands for continuous present tense, and that forms a tense and can be called as main verb or the finite verb. So actually is helping the main verb playing to form the finite verb. Same way have has got different kind of forms. Have itself, has or had, shall have, will have, etc. And do has got various forms: do, does, did, etc. On the other side, we have modal auxiliaries. So there are different kind of helping verbs. They work in a different way. Our main major concern for today is what? Modal auxiliary. They also work with the main action verb. Suppose is playing, is primary auxiliary and forming continuous present tense. But if you go for modal auxiliary, again play would be used over there in the root form, bare and infinitive form. But with that, if you add any of these auxiliary, can give you different kind of function or meaning or mood. For example, should play, that shows the advice or suggestion that you should play. So these modal auxiliaries work in a different way with again the main action verb, and they are of different types: will, would, can, could, may, might, shall, should, must, ought to. Few others are also there, so we'll go for it. So these are main two types of verbs: lexical as well as auxiliary. Out of auxiliary, primary auxiliary and modal auxiliary. Our main concern is what? Modal auxiliary. Again, just to make it a bit more clear or clearer, auxiliary or helping verb. Auxiliary verb helps the main verb to describe action. That action happened in the past, or is happening in the present, or will happen in the future. That is, we're talking about the primary auxiliary. Am, is, are, be able to, been, being, can. They are not there. Can, could, dare, do, does, going to, had. These are all auxiliary or helping verbs. Out of them, some are primary or auxiliary and some are modal auxiliary. But this is the verbs. These are the verbs that actually help the main verb to either form the tense or to go for different mood or function, etc. So what is modal verb now? So here we have the difference clear cut between modal verbs and primary auxiliary that form the main verb. So left hand side is giving you the idea about modal verb. Right hand side is giving you the idea about simple auxiliary verb, primary auxiliaries. So modal verbs are auxiliary verbs that express modality, one of different kind of mood, function, ability, etc. On the contrary, auxiliary verbs are verbs that help the main verb to express tense, voice, and other grammatical aspects. Second difference, modal verbs indicate possibility, probability, ability, permission, obligation, necessity, different state or mood. On the contrary, auxiliary verbs indicate only tense, mood, grammatical aspect, etc. of the main verb. Modal verbs are not subject to inflection. If the subject is noun, so auxiliary verb changes according to its number or gender. So there has to be subject verb agreement, but in auxiliary verb. But in modal verb, you cannot see this kind of subject verb agreement most of the time. Modal verbs in English include can, could, may, might, must, ought to, etc. Auxiliary verb, as you have seen, form of be, form of do, and form of have. Here we have the concept of modal verbs. They are auxiliary verbs that provide additional and specific meaning. Sorry. So, modal verbs are auxiliary verbs that provide additional and specific meaning to the main verb of the sentence. Modal verbs are sometimes referred to as modal auxiliary verbs because they help other verbs. Now we have different modal verbs with their usages at a glimpse. So let's have a quick glance at the different modal auxiliaries and their different usages. Suppose can, the most popular and most known one, that show the it works with the main verb and it shows the ability of doing something by the doer. So that shows ability or doubt or astonishment, permission, polite, request. May, that shows again permission. More than one verb can provide the same kind of specific meaning or function. May can show permission, supposition, even with doubt, or if not prohibition. Must shows obligation, from necessity, logical conclusion, probability. Shall shows intention, supposition, suggestion. Will shows wish, desire. Will, that will means desire, ichha. Confidence in the future. Ought to, moral duty, insistent advice, that is stronger than should. Strict recommendation, need, shows necessity, have to show willingness or forced circumstances, would show again wish to like, polite request or habit of past. Again, should is missing over there. Should, very important one, shows suggestion, advice, recommendation, etc. So here we have the concept of modal verbs. Now we're going to see it the way your textbook would like to teach you. So let's bring the textbook and understand what is given over there. Okay, now we have the textbook with us. So you already got some basic idea. So you'll be able to do this exercise. Underline the modal verbs in the following sentence and write their purposes. So that is the pre-knowledge that is being checked over there. For example, Sumit can sing well. That shows this is auxiliary verb. Can sing well, but he is very shy. That shows the ability of Sumit of singing song. She may leave this job if her salary is not increased. That shows the probability, very mild one. Tarun could be waiting for us at that again shows probability, assumption over there. You need to pay, so need, that is necessity. Can I pay by check? Asking for the permission. Can. We ought to tell the teacher, that is a strong recommendation or advice. Ought to tell the teacher about the broken window pane. You may go back to class now. That is permission given by the principal. The child couldn't lift, that is the ability in the past tense using the modal auxiliary. Could. Success doesn't come easily, you should not give up. That is an advice or suggestion using should. I dare not tell, that is about the fight today. मतलब inability or inaction because of certain circumstances using dare. So here we have models and the different purpose. Modal verbs are a group of auxiliary helping verbs that are used to express range of functions, the chief of which are ability, possibility, permission or obligation. Obligation means sense of duty or kind of mild force to incline you to do the action. There are two important classes of modals, pure modals and semi-modals. So pure modals are can, could, may, might, should, would, shall, should, will, would and must and had to. Actually, these are the tenses: can, present, could, past, may, present, might, past, and etc. Semi-modals have the characteristics of verbs and modals. One of them can also be working as main verb as well as modals. Dare, need, and ought to. The use of modal verbs is determined by the meaning which the speaker wishes to express. What kind of mood or the meaning you want to convey regarding the situation, and accordingly it is used. It is less concerned with the tense and more concerned with the mood or the intention or the situation that the speaker really wishes to express. As there are fine shades of difference in the meaning of modal verbs, many times different verbs may be used in the same that I told you earlier. The same modal verb can be used for the same, different modal verbs can be used for the same kind of situation. So for example, may can be used for permission, can also be used for permission. So can and may both can indicate what the permission. But it is all about intensity. How intensive the permission is, it depends. So that is all about understanding in situation. Read the following sentences carefully. Could you please be quiet? Must you talk all the time? Can you be quiet? Will you be quiet? See, in sentence 1 shows polite and formal way of asking someone to be quiet. As I told you, intensity. Now, can and will is more intensive. That shows the tint of annoyance or anger or agitation. It seems to be a bit strict one. Sentence 2 shows the speaker is annoyed. Sentence could be spoken by a person who is in some way superior toward the listener. One of your teacher, your father can speak. Can you be quiet? Your elder, will you be quiet? And if your friend is sitting by you and want you to be quiet, so then they could go for a bit request tone. Like, could you please be quiet? Must you talk all the time? Something like that. Again, if you go deeper into the meaning, sentence 2 shows annoyance. Must you talk all the time? क्या हर समय बात करना जरूरी होता है? Now comes to third one, sarcastic tone. Can you be quiet? It is sarcastic, ironical. You should be quiet, but you're not, and looking very bad. It is as if the speaker were throwing a challenge to the listener, saying that keeping quiet would be an impossibility for him or her. Can you be quiet? Can you be quiet? You can't be quiet. That is what I mean. And 4-1 shows annoyance or authority. Will you be quiet? Silly by speaker or the father or elder, or the speaker is almost ordering the listener, dismissing him or her in what? Anger. So every time the meaning is same, function is same, but the intensity, the mood, the kind of tone is what different with the same kind of purpose of the model. This is where they are very special and difficult to apply in the real language, in the real life. In which situation or with what purposes modal verbs can be used? So modal verbs are used to express functions as possibility, ability, obligation or necessity, permission, prohibition, advice, suggestions, request, as well as resolution, मतलब you resolve something, मतलब you are formed to do something, taken the formed decision to do something. So here we have separate uses. Suppose can, possibility, ability, permission or request and suggestion, but in different intensity. Mind well that you have to judge. So possibility example is that you can pass if you study. So there is a possibility of your passing on one condition if you study. Ability, you can play the violin, मतलब you have the ability of playing the violin. Permission, request, can I borrow your phone please, मतलब मैं आपका फोन ले सकता हूँ थोड़ी देर के लिए. Suggestion, can you lift down a bit, थोड़ा आप शिफ्ट डाउन, थोड़ा दूर जाइएगा, थोड़ा बाजू में हटिएगा, आपके लिए अच्छा होगा, थोड़ा दूर हो जाइए प्लीज, यहाँ पे इलेक्ट्रिक करंट रन कर रहा है. So it is a suggestion. Again purposes will be repeated. Possibility again comes, but it is a bit milder than can. He could pass if he studied, that is in past tense. Ability in the past, 2 years ago I could run faster than you, that is in past tense. Permission or request, that is in past, or that is a bit polite one, milder than can. Could you please switch on the fan? थोड़ा पंखा चला देंगे. Suggestion, again polite, more polite than can. So can is a bit form one, could would be a bit polite one. Excuse me, could you give me some room, थोड़ी जगह दीजिएगा please. Shall shows the future action, future resolution formally. Suggestions again and offers. For example, future action, I shall go to France this holiday. That is lexical, primary auxiliary. This falls in primary auxiliary. That only shows the tense, but the rest of the two show the flavor of modal auxiliary. Future resolution, prisoner shall go home tomorrow. There is a decision taken, a proclamation is announced over there, something very firm. Suggestions or offers, shall we dance? Let us dance. That works like that. Should, possibility, likelihood, ऐसा हो सकता है, ऐसा हो सकता है. They should win this game easily. Possibility, जीतना चाहिए ऐसा नहीं, जीत सकते हैं. There is a probability. Likelihood, हो सकता है. दूसरा जो होता है प्योरली एडवाइस, आपको ऐसा करना चाहिए. You should start preparing for your exam. That is advisable for you. Now comes will. I will visit you tomorrow. That is again falling in lexical use. I mean the main verb belongs to a tense, future tense, simple future. But again resolution, that is a form one. We will win the game. That is a promise. That is a resolution, firm decision, determination. Now again come would. Future action, future of past. I thought I would be late, so I left early. Hypothesis means the kind of situation that you could imagine or estimate would be called as hypothesis. I would give you money, but कब? If I had money. अगर पैसा होगा तो मैं दूंगा. That is called as improbable condition. Polite request, would you please tell me the time? It is very much similar to could. Now may, that is pure for the possibility and also purely used for permission, but is in the question form. Normally question, request or permissions normally go with questions. May, it may rain, हो सकती है बारिश. Formal permission, may I leave the room now, that is quite formal. Again could is also be used, could can also be used, can also be used for permission, but may is quite formal. Should go for, by using may you can go for I can say boss or teacher or something like that. Now might, Might again is the past tense of may. So it again shows the probability, but in past tense. More than that, I would say might can also be used for present tense, but it again shows very mild probability. It is less intensive than may. So for example, he said it might rain the next day. Again, might also can go for suggestion. Might I recommend the Hilton, an excellent hotel? That means I would like to recommend you Hilton, or you should go to Hilton. It is an excellent hotel. So that is looking like a suggestion. And here might is in the beginning of the sentence but does not make a question. It is a very special use of might, just to show the suggestion. Speculation, that means kind of assumption. You're guessing something. He might go to America next week. So you are it's not a probability, but you might be assuming something or speculating something. ऐसा हो सकता है, that's what I think or I guess. So this is the use of might. Now comes must. There is only single use, very strong necessity or a very strong obligation. You have to do something. Otherwise you can be harmed or you can be punished or you have to pay something for not doing the kind of task the way it should be done. For example, you must complete this work, otherwise you can be given punishment. So that is that intensive. Now must not has got different use. Prohibition. You must not tease the animals. That is the lawsuit can be filed, law can be broken, it can be anarchy to something. So that could be the use of, I can say, must. Had to, again almost working like must. It shows the necessity or obligation, but that would be in the past. He had to leave this apartment when he couldn't afford to pay the rent. Sometimes must is quite compulsory action to be done. Had to is an obligation or force from outside source. So have to, has to, or had to, working almost as good as must. But had to, has to, and have to are used especially when you feel the force or obligation from the outside source. Now comes dare. It is a warning or admonition. Admonition means a kind of warning, a word of advice, a very firm rebuke. Rebuke means scolding, खिजाओ. Dare anyone go there? है किसी में हिम्मत उधर जाने की? जाएगा कोई? Something like that. No one dare go there. वहां पे कोई भी नहीं जाएगा. वहां पे जाना मना है. वहां पे जाने की हिम्मत मत करना. Something like that. That is dare. How dare you touch me? You must not touch me, otherwise you will be in a great trouble. Need, necessity, obviously you need only ask and I will tell you. सिर्फ मुझे पूछने की जरूरत है, मैं तुम्हें सब बताऊंगा. No one need think that their jobs are at risk. ऐसा सोचने की जरूरत नहीं है, कि तुम्हारी जॉब खतरे में है, something like that. So it shows purely necessity. It is even more intensive than need, than must. You need to pay the bill. So it is, you must pay the bill is even less intensive than what need. That is absolutely necessity. And then last but not the least, ought to. That shows duty, again necessity. Moral obligation, it is stronger than should and less intensive than must. So more forceful than should and less forceful than what must. So almost working like that. Ought to is very close to should. You ought to apologize your wife. Now here, you should know, you ought to, otherwise you could be in a. The must is not used because if you don't, then you cannot be given punishment, or there would be no harsh or very hard consequence that you have to feel, but it is your moral duty to do this. You ought to be more punctual. There is again a necessity over there to be punctual, otherwise you could be in a great trouble. So that is the usage of all the commonmost auxiliary verbs, modal auxiliaries I would say. But you have to remember those uses and also try to recognize or identify, or you need to strike when the real situation comes to you. So practice observation can make you perfect in using the modal auxiliaries at the correct places. So here we end the part 1, and the next part we'll go for all the exercises connected with what? Modal auxiliaries. Thank you very much, friends.